Hey, this is Greg Johnson with Blue Book Services. I'm joined today by Anne-Marie Roerink from 210 Analytics. Anne-Marie, we just saw each other at SEPC Southern Exposure, and you presented your annual Power of Produce with sponsored by and coordination with FMI. I always love that presentation. So many of the people in the industry look forward to that. And of course, it was a packed ballroom like usual, like you're used to. I want to dig into a couple of your stats and topics and just get a little more color to them. One of the, one of the first things that you started off with was um, how fresh fruit is really doing well in the marketplace, and fresh veg has very minimal year-over-year growth. What do you think the trend is behind that on the consumer side?
Yeah, I actually, first of all, good to see you. Glad to gab some more. And I think it's always important to dig a little bit deeper, right? Because it's easy to say, oh, the produce department had a great year. We grew dollars, units, volume. Let's keep at it. But what we started to see very early on in 25 is that fruit just kept growing aggressively, often at 2 or 3x that of vegetables. But then in the second half of the year, we actually saw vegetable sales go down year over year in dollars, units, and volume. And that's one of those points in time where you look back and you're like, is this unusual? What is happening? And then you realize that we've actually seen fruit outgrow vegetables for years. But because both were growing, we didn't really pay a ton of attention to it. But now that vegetables are down year on year, all of a sudden it becomes one of these things where we're all like, what's happening? So last fall at SEPC at the Southern Innovation, we really dug deep into this. And what we found was behind it wasn't necessarily price, but it was that enormous demographic shift that we have coming at us. And boomer dollars at this point are flat to down, and they're pulling back on vegetable dollars where there are still growing fruit. That is one reason. But millennials are coming into the category very, very hard along with Gen Z. Together, they're nearly 70% of unit growth. And when you look at those Gen Z and millennial families, they are much more focused on fruit. So we dug really deep into that. And what we found out is where, perhaps the you and me's of this world were told to sit at the dinner table, eat our veg until it was gone. A lot of millennials and Gen Z themselves lean toward fruit and are totally fine with their children to consume fruit at dinner, lunch, breakfast, snack, if they don't like the vegetable. And so we see that really diverging more and more the younger the shopper gets. So that was really interesting to me.
Do you think it also has to do with prep? Because so many, hardly any fruits you really have to do anything to, but wash them or peel them and eat them. Whereas veg takes some prep, takes some effort, maybe some knowledge. Is that a possible gap too?
I would agree. If you think about how many meals are eaten on the road, my kids are 12 and 13, and it feels like my car is the cafeteria these days, where just about every dinner, every night is consumed in the car. So absolutely, I think in a way, fruit is meant to be immediately consumed with very little preparation or what have you, whereas vegetables, of course, do require a lot more work and knowledge, and that can definitely have something to do with it. And it was very interesting to see the strength of berries that just continue to climb month after month. They're the number one in adding new dollars. Apples, oranges, those kinds of things. But I really thought there was a very interesting story in yams and sweet potatoes. They used to be so just one holiday focused, and the most popular recipe, the most Googled recipe in 2025 was that sweet potato, ground beef, cottage cheese, and hot honey bowl. And lo and behold, sweet potatoes are the number one growth item in terms of volume on the veg side. So it really does show how that social media makes these an impact beyond belief.
Yeah, I noticed your slides showed that very heavily in Gen Z and millennial. And I'm sure that's true. It's the TikTok effect.
Yeah. We saw it last year with cucumber guy, right? But that was a commodity that everybody eats, and it ended up driving a lot more trips. the beauty about sweet potatoes, I think, gave us a whole new audience that never really made sweet potatoes and are now making these bowls a couple times a month. So it's a very interesting impact that can completely change all the growth patterns that we're used to.
Okay, one other stat that jumped out that I want to talk with you about is it's your presentation said that 88% of people still buy produce at the store that they didn't expect to buy, which is still a huge number, but it's down from 93%. Uh, 5 percentage points seems kind of significant. Is that a trend that you're seeing?
It is a trend I'm seeing, and not just in the produce department. People are shopping very differently over the last couple of years. For a while there, everybody was trying to shop less often because we were busy and we were buying these enormous carts. Well, what we're seeing over the last couple of years is more trips than we've ever seen. If you just compare the number of times people buy groceries today versus just a couple of years ago, it's up by double digits. People are now shopping for produce 2 to 3 times a week versus 1 to 2 times a week. And all that is because A, we're chasing promotions, and B, people are buying just enough to make sure that every dollar spent is a dollar consumed and a dollar enjoyed. And that food waste part is really, really important. But it also means that when consumers are in the store, they're really trying to stick to their list or trying not to buy that extra item that looked so beautiful the way we were always able to do that in years past. So, I think ramifications, and I'd love to hear your opinion on it, are like, we really need to focus on freshness, how fast that fruit and veg made it from field to the store, about our quality and quality control as items come into the store. Because if consumers are that focused on food waste, we have an opportunity to be a real hero in that, I think.
I totally agree. Anecdotally, one of my personal shopping things is I'm an Aldi shopper for a lot of things, and they're not always very good at the cold chain. And so I find myself buying what I know I'll eat in the next couple days because that food waste situation. And it's partly me, it's partly the changing going to a discount store and discount grocers, Lidl, Aldi, they are on the rise. Do you think that might be part of it too?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Smaller store, smaller trip, quicker in and out. Placer AI has some very interesting stats on that, where people are only spending maybe 10, 15 minutes in the store. So it truly is purchasing for the next couple of days and back out again. So it just think at the long run, we all have to up our merchandising game, our freshness, our quality. Really getting also, I would say meal planning is a bigger thing. So getting in very, very early into that purchase, not waiting for our usual, we look so visually beautiful in the store, we will get them there. No, we've got to strike early and make sure we're on that list.
Yeah, it seems like convenience is fits perfectly into that too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's probably where we can still pick up some of those margin dollars, right? Some cut fruit for my cafeteria is definitely easy. And that's really where produce and deli are starting to blend together as well, where sometimes it's impossible to tell whether that salad was sold out of the produce department or the deli department, roasted veggies, all those kinds of things. So I would say taking care of people's mental load to figure out what's for dinner, how am I going to just figure all this out? That is a huge part of winning today.
All right, final topic, GLP-1s. I'm fascinated by these and how they're affecting food purchasing. Your stats show that 13% of consumers say they're taking them at least part-time or coming off or whatever. Um, FMI's Rick Stein pointed out during the panel that if a household has a person taking one, that just because it's only 13%, if it's a five-person household, that's one person doing it. That's the average, one person out of the five, and it affects all the purchases for that family. So are you seeing that in the stats, and do you think that will continue?
It definitely can. So when we look at the core GLP-1 consumer, it tends to be an older millennial, so 40 to 45-ish female. And oftentimes they have children at home, so very much the busy mom life. And that often also means that at least part of all um, shopping falls on that person. So what we're seeing is a lot of focus on nutrient density, on protein, on smaller meals, more snacks. So oftentimes, none of these consumers walk away from categories, but they are eating maybe smaller portions or looking for fiber, protein, those kinds of things. So it can absolutely impact the produce purchase as well. And what we're seeing in some of the other countries is a focus on GLP friendly portion sizes. So I love that personally because people are also looking for lower price points and a single and two-person household portion. So really that idea of smaller portions works for many, many reasons in today's marketplace.
It seems to me that the GLP-1 rise is not a bad thing for the perishable departments. I know you cover meat also. Meat is a huge part of GLP-1s. Do you think this is something that produce and I guess broader perishable could embrace?
Absolutely. If you think about all those little dishes that are ready to go in the oven or the microwave that have a protein, a veg, those kinds of things, I think it actually is a huge opportunity for all fresh departments because a lot of these households are very focused and very knowledgeable about nutrition. So they have looked into things like ultra processed, into artificial ingredients. They're very focused on nutrient density and meat, produce, seafood. Those departments are, of course, the powerhouses when it comes to nutrient density. So I think more than ever, we need to be very good about putting fiber content, calories, those kinds of things right on the front of the pack, along with vitamins. If we have protein content, great. That's not our strength in produce, but the more we can teach consumers about the nutrient delivery of fruit and vegetables, I think that's a big win.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, I have a feeling that we could talk for another half hour to an hour easily, but I'm going to end it here and give you a huge thanks for expanding on all your information. It is such a great presentation, and uh, you go on forever with the data.
Yes, well, it just means we'll have to do this again.
Maybe we can. All right, we'll see about that. All
All
right,
right.
Anne-Marie, thank you so much.
Thank you.